to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Lauren Brayton, and today's guest is Bridgit Danner, licensed acupuncturist, and she'll be speaking on the hormone-gut connection for fertility. Bridgit Danner runs an online women's health community called Women's Wellness Collaborative. Through this community, she interviews experts in women's health through blogs, videos, podcasts, and online summits. Bridgit Danner practiced Chinese medicine for nearly 12 years and has performed over 12,000 treatments. She is also a certified Functional Diagnostic Nutrition practitioner. Bridgit became passionate about the online health space and women's health after her own postpartum health crisis. In finding her first online coaches and attending educational webinars while at home with a baby, she started to see the light through her own postpartum depression and adrenal and immune blowout. She also delved deep into holistic nutrition, functional medicine, and whole food cooking. She loves to share these tools with other women so they can accomplish all they want in life. Hi, Bridgit. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. I'm happy to be here.
So today, because you're a specialist as an acupuncturist in the hormone-gut connection and functional medicine and everything fertility, women hormone related, I'm really excited for you to share your wisdom and knowledge regarding how women can have healthy menstrual cycles and improved fertility and everything related to, wanting to become a mother, having a healthy pregnancy and birth. So let's talk about kind of your personal story of how you got started, like you became an acupuncturist and how you kind of delved and became an expert in this field of women's health and functional medicine.
Yeah, sure. So I got into studying acupuncture. I started studying in 2000, and I sort of got into holistic medicine out of an interest in protecting the environment and living an environmentally friendly lifestyle. So that was my original motivator. And I went to acupuncture school, and it was awesome. I went to school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and just got totally immersed in all the language and theory of Chinese medicine, which was great. And I moved afterwards to Portland, Oregon, and started to practice. And I was, single at the time, but I knew I wanted to have a family and a different kind of business model so I could, potentially be at home with, kids more or that kind of thing. So I decided I wanted to open up a center here, a practice. And fortunately at the time I fell in love and got married. So at the same time, I opened a practice, I had several treatment rooms and a yoga center, and had no money to put this on, and was planning a wedding. And since I was already in my 30s, I wanted to try to get pregnant right away. So in a really short amount of time, I opened this business, got married, and got pregnant in 6 months.
Wow.
So yeah, I bit off more than I could chew, and
that's right there.
I was stressed. Yeah, I worked 6 days a week the entire time I was pregnant, and had my son. Had to go back to work fairly quickly. We were just talking about abundance offline. I definitely was not in the abundance at this point in time. I was really scrapping, and it really affected my health. Yeah, hormonally, I think I went into a postpartum kind of slump. My adrenals were really shot. I was worrying a lot. I wasn't sleeping well. And then when my son was going to daycare, I started to get the sicknesses from the daycare. My immune system was really weak. So in this span of time, even though I was an acupuncturist and knew some things about health, I really needed more. I needed more tools, the tools. So in that span of time, I got my first coach, which was an online coach, and I started learning more about nutrition. My nutrition wasn't what it should have been. I started learning about functional medicine. I didn't even really know it was functional medicine at the time, but that term and that phrase has kind of grown since then. So I just, I kind of got some tools to heal myself and found the people to help me And through that experience, I was like, I really want to help other women. Like, no women should have a baby or any other phase in their life and just feel like they've hit this like rock bottom, like dark place that they didn't expect to be in. So yeah, from that, I was like, I've been very clear ever since that I want to work with women.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you had that personal experience of going through, high stress environment and through a pregnancy and birth and postpartum. And so it really makes sense that you actually, can empathize with women that are having the same struggles.
Yeah. And at first to be honest, at first I really wanted to focus on postpartum, but it's a tricky phase to catch women in because you're sort of like in it and you're home with a baby and, sometimes, like for me, by the time you realize you're in it, you're coming out of it. Right. So I decided to take a step back. Yeah, you can probably relate. You probably see that. I took a step back and decided to focus on fertility. So I did that for a few years. But then even with that, I was like, I think it's broader than just, it's this phase or it's this phase. Like as women, we're always going through phases from, puberty to menopause with our hormones and with our lives. And so I just kind of broadened out and focusing more generally on women's health. So I do talk a lot about hormones, but, through my podcast and my platform, we talk about nutrition and stress management and lifestyle because it all feeds in.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you just mentioned you have a podcast. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your podcast and what's on there, what people can learn from it.
Yeah, so it probably has some similarities to yours, it's a cousin. It's called Women's Wellness Radio, and it's mostly a interview podcast, although I'm starting to do a little bit more of my own material. But we cover all sorts of things, and, we have some chefs on there talking about, like, meal planning, and, we've got pregnancy experts like yourself, and we've got nutritionists and fitness people. So it's a lot of variety. I figure not every show is going to be like for everyone, but it'll always be something new and different every week. So, it's fun.
And the common denominator, it's for women. So it definitely has that women focus, which is my podcast as well. It's like, women are the people that, literally rule the show of health for their families. And so they're the ones who make the decisions on health care. So it's great to have, these types of resources so women can have direct access to learning more about their own health and health for their children so that they can be empowered to make choices and decisions on their health care.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I know that, in your practice that you've done a lot of different types of lab tests for hormone imbalances and how that can impact a woman in different phases of her life cycle. But regardless, hormone imbalance is never normal or pleasant to have. So can you talk a little bit about what you look for from a functional medicine perspective and how you've helped women make changes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is something that came on later in my career. I mean, my early career studying Chinese medicine was super traditional. Like, I didn't know much about labs, and, I was kind of intimidated to learn them because there's so much to learn. There's so much to know. But I was like, okay, if I'm going to, evolve my practice to the next level or where I want it to be, I've got to learn about labs. So I first started learning about blood labs and took some good courses in that and have some software. Those are sometimes the easiest for clients to get a hold of because they can usually get a full CBC, every year or two, and sometimes their physician will, order some extra labs. It can be a bit touchy because you don't want to tell a client, oh, your doctor needs to order you this lab because that's not their prerogative. But you can order blood labs online, as a consumer here now. So those are kind of my first entry into labs. And some of the hormones for the labs, it's a little debatable, right? Like how accurate it is for women's hormones. Sometimes we test on day 3, right, to see, kind of see what the ovaries are doing. Mostly is what we're checking on day 3. And then on day 21, we're checking progesterone levels to see if they've come up sufficiently. But yeah, there's totally debate on how accurate that is. But I think it's good to look at if women already have it. We can see something, for example, like on day 3, we can see maybe if there's a PCOS pattern going on, or if maybe there's some signs that there's some ovarian aging, if the ovaries like aren't responding as well, that kind of thing. And we can also see some great things like, you can get your vitamin D tested. And if that's very low, and and we see perhaps also there's something going on with the thyroid hormones, we can say, well, there's a couple things that go together. So seeing that kind of status, I think, is helpful. So many women have some anemia, some types of like B12, B6 deficient type anemia that we see quite a bit, and that can affect your health and your hormones. So I guess I usually mostly use the blood labs as more of like a supporting information to how the overall health is going and how hormone production may be going. And then some other options are a urine test. This is probably one of my favorites, one that I've learned about more recently. I use this test called Dutch. It stands for, dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. And you can test through that. You get some information about the adrenal hormones and how they fluctuate in the day. And then you get a sense of estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and then how it's breaking down, which is really helpful. Since I started to run that test, I'm learning like a lot of women aren't breaking down their hormones very well. So then they're like potentially recirculating, and that creates a lot of confusion. So that's a super test. There's also salivary hormone tests, and those can really accurately tell you your adrenal hormones through the day. And why that matters for female hormones is, if you're chronically stressed, if you're in some kind of dysregulation of your adrenal system and those hormones, then that's going to most often like play a part in your female hormones. So if your body is struggling just to like make energy throughout the day and, regulate itself, it's probably not doing such a hot job at making sex hormones, because in a way that's like a body system that our bodies can kind of disregard if they think that something else is more important. So if they think your survival is more important, they're not going to really focus on your fertility or your cycling. So, we often look at those adrenal profiles along with the sex hormones and get some ideas for treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you mentioned, the neuroendocrine system is such a intricate, delicate system. It's all connected. So the hypothalamus and pituitary in the brain are communicating with the thyroid, pancreas, adrenals, and ovaries. And if someone is exhausted from chronic high-stress lifestyle, where their body thinks they're being chased by a tiger, then it's not a good time to reproduce, right? So, like, your body's like, you don't need to get pregnant with a baby right now because you are in danger of being eaten by a tiger. That's what our bodies are sensing and feeling and producing hormones to match that. So it's going to, of course, throw off, the adrenals are, of course, going to throw off the thyroid or the ovaries and or all of it, really, pancreas, all of it, right? They're all intimately connected. You don't know if you mentioned the thyroid, but that's a big part of it, too.
Yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit briefly, that often you see, like, with low vitamin D, and you're also seeing some low thyroid function. And yeah, that really plays in, especially that second phase of the cycle being strong. Right. That kind of that low body temperature comes with low thyroid, kind of plays in, because when you're cycling, you need your temperature to be at a certain baseline, like 97.5, and then come up to 98. these sound kind of low because we always hear 98.6, 98.6. But this is like your morning temperature. So it needs to be at like 97.5 and come up to 98 for the second part of your cycle. And I see a lot of women, because I also just have women do just monitor their morning temperatures. I see a lot of women with like temperatures in like the 96s, and they only come up to like 97.3, and it's just like, in a simple way, like not enough heat to make that strong cycle and potential fertility.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so let's say there is a woman who is, her blood work, her urine, her saliva have come back showing that she's has some imbalances with her, not only sex hormones, but let's say cortisol and the adrenals, and maybe thyroid is also sluggish. What do you do to help a woman get her menstrual cycle back in balance?
Yeah, so I guess we can start with like some of the fundamentals, and I'll tell you something I observed since I started doing more lab testing. It's like if I would say don't bother to do it until you do the fundamentals, until you know you're ready to do even further, because sometimes I'm running labs on people and then they kind of just back out a bit. They're like, oh, well, I'm just going to try to get more sleep and that'll be it, which is great. It's great to get more sleep, but there's no point in spending like $500 on lab testing if you haven't, done those basic things first. So I'd say the basic things, and I know people probably heard some of these before, but we will move on from them, is, to get sleep. And if you're struggling with sleep, to address that. If you're struggling to be able to fall asleep, to address that. And some of that comes with that adrenal dysregulation. You just can't sleep, you're wired, but your body will start to rev up again around 10. You might call yourself a night owl. And if you can get to bed a little bit before 10, and, dim the lights and make it a relaxing evening, get off the computer and start to get to bed, just before 10, and start to get back on a more regular sleep cycle, get those 8 or 9 hours of sleep. We need that time to repair our bodies and to try to get back in that circadian rhythm of sleep and wake. Because that, just like our cycle is a rhythm, day and night is a rhythm. We have the rhythms of the seasons. We really, as women, need to be in touch with these rhythms for our rhythms to work correctly. So getting enough sleep is important.
Mm-hmm.
For women, blood sugar is really important, and I think it's one that women struggle with a lot. And most women will tell you, I have sugar cravings, I have a sweet tooth. It's just so important to get that under control. And some of that is
not
just
eating enough, like having too large of gaps between meals.
Skipping meals, yeah, for sure. Especially if you're like a busy working woman, maybe you're just having a coffee in the morning and nothing else, or being too, eating lunch at 3 because you were super busy. So yeah, what happens, and we all know what happens when we hit that low point. Then we overeat or we make bad choices, right? We like, okay, I'm going to gobble down 3 pieces of pizza because I'm so hungry. So, starting the day with a breakfast that has protein and fat, and that can be a big adjustment. Like sometimes you feel like you're not hungry. So I would say, don't get the coffee out before you eat, because the coffee will ramp you up and make you feel like you're not hungry. But try to get in that schedule of eating in the morning and eating regularly. If you work outside the home, to pack a lunch, a healthy lunch. I think that, cooking and eating are just so like fundamental, and even without getting into like what you should and shouldn't eat, just learning to cook more often and pack your lunch and have snacks of like nuts and fruit and that kind of thing throughout the day, and just eating those whole foods regularly, man, it can really make a difference in some symptoms. I can tell you when I was younger, I had a lot of acne. And just like changing my diet and getting the sugar out of my diet, just pretty much that step, like got my skin, under control. I just had all this like sugar like amping up and inflaming my pores, I think.
Well, what about candida overgrowth too, right? I mean, that could have been like a fungus thing too.
Yeah, that's like a lot of women complain about that for sure, right? That's a really common complaint that women think they have candida. And they may have candida, but yeah, getting like some of these foundational things set up, if you're eating, fermented foods and good fats, it's really not an environment where candida will thrive when you have those basic things down. And then I would say lastly is like time management, stress management. As much as like I love to accomplish things and I love for other women to accomplish things, knowing when the workday ends and when it's time to, make some food or get some exercise or meet up with a friend. Really like having some appreciation and holding a strong boundary for that, I think is really foundational too. If you're overgiving, overdoing, that's a surefire way to, affect your adrenals and get into that dysregulation. And then you're getting the missing periods or the irregular cycles and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say those are a few of the foundationals. Do you have any questions about that before we
I'm so glad you brought that up. Like that's like a universal ongoing topic that comes up a lot on Well-Adjusted Mama is really about, as women, we're such caretakers and we're taking care of so many people, our family and beyond, and that's how we get depleted. So, mama self-care is so important, and it's not selfish, and hopefully you're not feeling guilty by putting yourself first, because it really is really important. I just can't emphasize that enough. And I hear that from so many women in my practice, that there's this guilt, like, oh, but my children are having these health issues, or my husband, and so they're just completely depleted and worn out and exhausted, and that cycle will continue until they literally choose to put themselves first.
Yeah, exactly. And, no matter where you're at in that process, you can always kind of do a little more, give yourself a little more. And
a lot of it's that mind shift, too, of ideally not feeling that guilt when you are putting yourself first. So I feel like that's a big part of it, is literally a woman choosing to have a different perspective on what it means to be a mother and a wife and an employee and all the other, and a friend, and all the other roles that she plays in her life, and who is she as a woman, and how is she showing up in these different relationships, and how is she getting her needs met at every single level.
Yeah, I'll tell you like a funny story that really shocked people when I did it. It was like my husband and I went to Europe for 2 weeks when my son was how old he was, maybe 1.5 or something, 2. Maybe he was turning 2, and people were like a little shocked by that. I was like, I've had a hard couple of years, and I need some time alone with my husband, and, it doesn't mean I don't love my baby boy. Of course I do, but he's not going to remember any of this. He's just going to have 2 weeks with grandma. He's going to be totally fine, and, I don't know. It was something that I needed to do at that point in time. I just, needed to not worry about the money and just go for it and have this adventure. And that's okay, and there'll be naysayers sometimes, but you know what? I know that I was still being a good mom and my son was in good hands, and that was just something I needed.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you shared that story, because even if your gut tells you you're making the right decision and this is important and you follow through with that, which you deserve to have a 2-week vacation in Europe with your husband, and I'm sure it was so wonderful for your mind, body, and spirit to have that time. But culturally, I see it's unfortunate that other women can sometimes make a woman feel like she's being judged or that she's not a good mom. It's not even always coming from within. Sometimes it's actually externally being reflected, from women that are probably depleted themselves and are feeling maybe jealous. And at the end of the day, they can make those same choices too. They can also decide to, do something, make a different choice in how they're spending their time with their family and having quality time as opposed to, constant time.
Yeah, and we're all different. Some people choose to homeschool and stay home, and some women choose to have a lot of kids, or like I chose to only have one kid, and like it's we all have to, in our own hearts and minds, try to be careful not to judge, but it's going to happen that you're going to get judgments, and that's just part of like life, building that boundary to say, I know I'm okay with myself and in this choice, and you might not be okay with it, but that's
okay.
For you to figure out.
Yeah, and we're kind of got a little bit off topic, but I just felt like that was something that since the thread was leading us up to that place, I just wanted to cover it, and it's nice having you share your personal story as well. So we're going to switch gears back to the hormone-gut connection. I'd love for you to just kind of elaborate to the women listening about how hormones, all types of hormones, sex hormones, thyroid, any of the neuroendocrine hormones can be related to the health and function of our gut, our GI system.
Yeah, so we talked a little about the stress hormone connection, which maybe people hear more about, but I think the gut hormone connection doesn't get talked about quite as much. Maybe it's not as well understood or intuitive, but there's a few ways like we can sum up that the gut and the hormones are connected, and one is where do we get all our nutrition from our food and supplements, and then how we absorb them. If we don't absorb them, we're not getting them. So, and we need all those little micronutrients for our hormones to function. Like you said, the endocrine system is really complicated. So we need, all the B vitamins, and many that are quite important for hormone health. So we need to be extracting those out of our food. So, that means that, we need to be eating in a calm way and making enough stomach acid. You mentioned the thyroid earlier, and that can, when you're having a thyroid dysfunction, maybe you're making less stomach acid and not breaking down your food. Maybe you're eating a lot of foods you're sensitive to, so your gut is quite inflamed, so things aren't, getting through. We hear a lot about leaky gut and the stuff that shouldn't be getting through, but the other side of that can be that the permeability of like the small nutrients that should be going on, if the gut is kind of clogged up, so to speak, those little nutrients aren't getting in and absorbing into the blood. So that's just one example. And then also there's a lot of detoxification of hormones that happens in the gut, detoxification and elimination. So, these systems need to be strong. As I mentioned earlier, if you aren't detoxifying and eliminating, say, some estrogens, and they are kind of recirculating or getting stored back into fat tissue, that's going to really confuse things for your body, because your body's working on a feedback loop, right? So if it's thinking, oh, well, she's got hormones, like we won't make any more hormones, then you could end up, not ovulating. Lots of things could be going haywire in the system. So that's another example of how, the gut plays into hormones. And let's see. Yeah, and then just if you are having inflammation in the gut, it's such a stress on the system. So we talked about the stress of like life, and then there's stress that happens within our bodies. And if we have parasites, or we're dealing with a lot of food sensitivities, and maybe we've taken antibiotics and we didn't recover well, if there's stress in that gut system, that's, kind of using up a lot of our body's energy just to deal with that. And then what are we going to not do? We're not going to make sex hormones the way we should. So it's always important to get that gut in order, for so many things in life, and that includes for our female hormone problems.
Yeah, I'm really glad you touched on like the estrogen dominance, where if someone is having chronic constipation, which I've certainly seen women come into my office that thought, a weekly bowel movement was normal because that's all they've known for themselves, but not having regular daily complete elimination of toxins out of their body through your primary pathway of elimination, which is your gut, then those hormones, especially estrogen, can easily get reabsorbed, stored in our bodies. And if we're carrying excess fat, you mentioned that too, like that's where these sex hormones get stored. So we can actually really get a buildup of estrogen, and it can really wreak havoc on balance and cause issues. And the other thing too is, what about neurotransmitters? Like those are produced in our gut. So those are also going to be working with our hormones and giving some biochemical feedback. So that's another gut connection as well.
Yeah, and they go to the brain, and then they also do different functions in the gut, like help move the gut along. So things can be this, interwoven, what came first type of thing. But
right.
The gut is so key. I don't know if do you know Dr. Laura Bridgen, who does written some hormone books? She'd be a good guest for your show. I just interviewed her recently, and as far as detoxification, we always think about the liver, and she's like, oh no, I really focus on the gut because of the issues with reabsorption. And there's something I don't know a lot about, but I'll say a bit. It's the estrobolome. It's like a bacterial breakdown of estrogen in the gut, and if that bacterial environment isn't healthy, then again, like the estrogen that maybe got half broken down in the liver is now getting like reabsorbed, and it didn't get to its phase 2 breakdown. So
right in the liver.
Yeah, so I always thought that was really interesting that we always think, oh, detox liver, but she's like, no, I really focus on gut health and the microbiome for detoxification.
Right, and the microbiome is all these, good bacteria, viruses, and other microbes that are living in and on our body that are just so essential for all these different functions of our body. We can't live without them. These are all the good guys. So that's interesting. And you know what, the other thing that you just also pointed out, which, there's different versions of estrogen. So, I guess when estrogen's only partially broken down, that could also create more of that toxic version of estrogen, which is linked to the hormonal cancers, breast cancer, ovarian, uterine, things like that. Like all estrogens aren't created equal. So I'd be curious to learn more about that too.
Yeah, I would like to learn more about that too.
And you know what? It's so fascinating because there's so much that we're just learning every day, right? Like this is not an exact science. Like there's a lot still for all of us to learn about how our bodies work. They're so intricate.
Yeah, like I'm just starting to learn about this estrobolome, but I don't exactly know, if we are deficient in this estrobolome breakdown, like what exactly is coming out the other end. Is this more toxic form of estrogen, or, where is it going next? So, yeah, it's really interesting. But again, like just getting back to some of the basics, if you want, Dr. Laura, I could talk about more like things that people could do to nourish their gut.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, let's say a woman is putting focus energy around the foundationals, like you mentioned. She's getting her sleep. She's eating really healthy, nutritious foods. She's managing her stress levels, and she's still not feeling well. Like sometimes even with the best foundation, if you really have some chronic stress and you're really been imbalanced for a while, more than the foundation is necessary. So what would a woman do beyond that?
Okay, so I'm going to try to give some things that are pretty easy and accessible. So let's talk about first just adding a little bit of fermented food every day. Usually when I mention fermented food, my clients would say, oh, well, I eat yogurt. Yogurt is not really my favorite. Mostly it's pasteurized, and it's also been found that a fermented dairy doesn't usually hit the large intestine like you think it is. So it gets a lot of press on yogurt commercials and all that, but better to learn to eat sauerkraut and kimchi and fermented vegetables and that kind of thing, kombucha, and you can make this stuff yourself, but you can also just buy it. Most places now you can buy really nice raw kimchi or sauerkraut that tastes amazing, and if you're not used to it, I didn't grow up on this stuff. I wasn't used to it. But just have a little bit. You don't need like a huge serving. Just have a little bit as like a garnish, and you're going to start to enjoy that kind of sour taste. And if you can have like a little bit every day, there's so many like billions of probiotics and that stuff. So, it's kind of like cheaper than taking a pill, although I do like probiotic pills, but it's cheaper than taking a pill. It's something you can do every day. Another thing you can do every day is lemon water. And I talk like a half a lemon or a whole lemon in water. I love the vitamin C for the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are packed with vitamin C. And it's like so easy. And especially like in the afternoon, I like it as a little boost. And then many people do lemon water in the morning to kind of help detoxify and hydrate. So that's a really simple thing you can do. Let's see. There's some other easy ones. I really like adaptogenic herbs, and that can be an easy tea you do. Like most grocery stores will sell what's called a tulsi tea or holy basil tea, and it's nice and mild tasting, and that's a nice like way for your body to support it in its stress handling. So that's a good one. I don't know why this is coming to mind right now, but I like fermented cod liver oil. It doesn't taste amazing, but again, you don't need much, like a half a teaspoon. It really seems to, for me, like help my immune system adapt, and then you get some of those healthy anti-inflammatory fats. You get a little bit of natural, like vitamin A and vitamin D. So that can be a little something to have every day. Another great thing for women is fiber. A lot of us aren't getting enough fiber, and fiber again is going to help like cleanse the gut and remove toxins. And plus it feeds the microbiome because they need a variety of different fibers for the different like types of bacteria to grow. So trying to think about variety when you go. Exactly. It provides a prebiotic food for the bacteria. So just getting a wide variety of vegetables, like changing with the seasons, trying not to like buy the same 5 vegetables every time you go to the store, but like, learning about other vegetables is great. I am a fan of cooked food, but like a little bit of raw food every day, like a little light salad is nice. But yeah, just like other ways to get vegetables are adding like hemp seed or chia seed or ground flaxseed, fresh ground flaxseed to like smoothies or on top of your salad, or like say if I'm having like a bowl of soup, I might like sprinkle it with sesame seeds. So there's lots of ways to get like little bits of seeds and fibers into you. So that's a healthy practice to add in.
And that brought up a question for me. You had mentioned earlier about like seasonal, like cycling. What about eating seasonally? Like you had mentioned, like trying different vegetables. Like a lot of that is whatever's in season. Like in the fall, winter, there's certain vegetables that are able to grow during that season. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I would say I try to eat seasonally, but, I'm not perfect. Like if I live in Oregon, and like if I think about what naturally would be available to me, in this time of the year, it would probably be like squashes that we stored, or like maybe some apples we stored. I mean, I suppose you could grow some greens like over the winter. So yeah, you think about some of the things we eat. How many of us eat like lots of coconut oil and coconut products? Like that's not native to my environment. So I try to strike a balance. There's definitely some things I have that are not native to my environment or not in my season. But at the same time, like I do try to think about, okay, well, it's winter and I am eating more squash and I'm having more stews. I'm not like eating tons of like bananas or, something like that. So yeah, that's a good point. But I think even if like trying to eat mostly seasonally or locally, you can still try to get some variety. Yeah.
Yeah, and organic, of course.
Yeah, and I do think like in most areas, maybe not if you're in like the coldest part of the Midwest, but usually there's some greenhouses growing little greens, or I don't have it in the winter, but I have a farm share in the summer for 5 or 6 months, and I get such weird stuff from that farm share, and I like it because it makes you learn how to cook new things and try new things. And
like you mentioned, all those micronutrients, too.
Yeah, I think about something that's got, picked that morning and shipped to you from the countryside, and it's like, wow, this is, it just feels good. I totally appreciate people who grow their own food too. I've never had much of a green thumb for that, so I do more farm share stuff. But when food is fresh, it has more nutrition for sure. With I think a refrigerator tricks us. We think, oh well, this salad still looks good, even though I bought it 2 weeks ago. There's not much left in that salad. If you left that on a counter, it would be just a pile of mold right now. So we have to think about, okay, well, how long would this last normally?
Right. And the other thing, I love that you mentioned with the farm shares, it's nice to, support local farms and, by having them deliver things that you wouldn't necessarily buy at the store yourself because you've never seen it before, it does actually bring in different nutrients that you probably aren't consuming on a regular basis. So, because all different fruits and vegetables have all these different phytonutrients that are going to, benefit the body in so many ways. So farm shares are great. The community, like a CSA, community shared agriculture, is awesome if you can join one of those in your neighborhood.
Yeah, most people have that opportunity, or some people go to farmers markets, which I advocate for too. I like doing the share because I'm lazy, I guess. It just shows up on my porch. Right? So I can't always make it to the farmer's market. So, but yeah, it's all great. It's so great to just get involved with our food and we're busy, but finding ways to make it easier, whether it's getting it delivered or finding ways to make it fun, like meeting a friend at the farmer's market. Hopefully it becomes a bit of a hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, Bridgit, in closing, I would love for you to just share a little bit about your upcoming Women's Hormone Summit and your website and other ways that women can, stay in touch and follow you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for letting me come on and share. And you can learn more at BridgitDanner.com, and that's also WomensWellnessCollaborative.com. Goes to the same place. And the event that's coming up is called Hormones, the Women's Wellness Summit, and you'll have a link for it there in your show notes with the show. So it's free to join, and it's a week of free lectures and interviews with experts in women's health. So we talk about life stages like pregnancy and postpartum, and then we talk about conditions that are more common to women like PCOS or, hypothyroid. Then we talk about different treatment options. Yeah, there's everything from paleo lifestyle to, Chinese medicine. So it's free to attend, and there's lots of fun stuff, and it's just a great way for us to create community and share resources and just get us talking about how we can help each other.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I'm so excited about it to be able to sign up and listen to these experts because I learn something new every podcast interview I do, and it's just there's just so much information out there with the internet that it's such an exciting time to be able to share knowledge and information, and I think it's very empowering for women to have access to these resources. So thank you for putting this summit on. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I just want to share too, we're all about implementation. You don't have to do everything you learn, but if you do 2 new things, that make a difference, that's awesome. So, just we can have a playful attitude with it too. We don't have to you don't have to be too overwhelmed.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because that can be so true. If someone's already feeling so exhausted and tired and overwhelmed, to be like, oh my God, I have to completely change my diet and my lifestyle and everything, like it's just going to shut somebody off, right? And so, the best way to create new habits is to really go slow and steady and make baby steps. And, as one of my mentors says, we have to go slow to go fast. So, that is such a key part of actually achieving success here, is just going slow, so that things can actually anchor in. And then once that's anchored, you can add in a new tool.
Yeah, I shared my story, and when you share it in 2 minutes, it makes it sound like it happened quickly, but it was a long journey for me to figure out all the tools that I needed. And, it doesn't end. I still have to implement those tools, and, I fall off the wagon or, have a step back sometimes, but it's just the job of keeping up our human bodies is, just staying engaged with it.
That's right. And just having more of a conscious awareness, body awareness of what your body needs and wants and deserves, and listening to that, and really appreciating the power that is our body and how much it does for us. It's really spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, and I really enjoyed this interview.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for listening.